she wrote about Loretta Lynn. We have to get her this. We have to get her this. I just think it's the sweetest thing in the world,
It's totally sweet. And it also tells me that you're going to get Loretta Lynn stuff for the rest of your life. Today's guest is Shawna K. Rodenberg, whose new memoir is called Kin.
It's a coming of age memoir, the vast majority of which happens in Eastern Kentucky. It sort of opens with our move to Minnesota. We lived on a religious commune for a period of time when I was a little girl. And then we moved back to Eastern Kentucky. The book is about my family, my experiences with religion, with Appalachia, centers a lot on the relationships of women in my family. Those, at least that's the part of the book that is the most important to me.
Depending on your background, you're going to tune more into like the religious stuff or the regional stuff or the personal relationships. And it really is a feast in that way. I know I want to read a book if you have praise from like Roseanne Cash and Nick Flynn. I like so much the blurb or the praise from Nick Flynn, and I wrote a little piece of it here. It was, whatever you believe about Appalachia, prepare to have those beliefs upended or at least beautifully complicated. I wondered if you would talk a little bit about this idea of beautiful complications, whether it's about, people, the places, or religion, any part of that for you that might resonate.
It's kind of funny that he wrote that, because one of the first conversations I had with a potential publisher, was he asked me what I wanted the book to be. And I couldn't think of any, part of it was just, I was nervous and I was on the spot and I was having trouble thinking, but I finally was able to say, I don't really know what I want it to be, but I know what I want it to do. And my answer was to complicate the narratives of Appalachia specifically. But I think that's also true, whether you're talking about people from the mountains or talking about church girls, trailer trash, or any of these sort of terms that we use to describe certain groups of people. I'm so interested in their stories and in complicating those narratives that I think we, for lots of reasons, oversimplify. Nothing matters more to me than sort of moving away from the idea of the Appalachian woman or the rural woman or the churchy woman as one-dimensional, quaint, charming, easy. I mean, the women I know, the women in my family, are some of the most complicated people I know, in the best way.
I understand the tendency to go to those easy categories. I mean, it's only as I get older that I can bear the complication, let's say, of religion or human beings. It's really interesting to see which categories the culture does want to oversimplify, whether it's using the word trash or whatever it is, that there is a lot there. And so that's another real power, I think, in your writing, is that you bring this perspective that goes to complication, but also that you are going to those topics that do need to be looked at differently a little bit. I think it's not easy to do, Shawna, and I really admire that you do that.
It's really encouraging to hear from people who understand what I was trying to do. So thank you.
Yeah, not only understand, but really appreciate it. I mean, I'm going to say something kind of dramatic that maybe I'll just cut right out anyway, but I think we're dying for lack of, nuance or complication. This time when a book just comes out, I think it is really fit. What is it called when you have a baby?
The younger generation, they're so good at coming up with better language for everything. I've heard them call it the fourth trimester, which I think is really
so you're in the fourth trimester of your book.
I'm in the fourth trimester. Yeah. I have a really good friend, Mark Wunderlich. He's my mentor, and really the reason that I started writing the book. He has said before that this period of time when your book comes out is like going to a funeral over and over and over, the same funeral.
Okay.
And I think, it's morbid, but I also think there's truth to it. It's like you're sort of listening to people talk about something that you've had to distance yourself from. Like you have to distance yourself from it to let it go, to be done with it, and to say, okay, I can't do anymore. It's finished. No more edits, no more, and then just sit and watch as people like walk past it and say, what they think. A little overwhelming when you're someone
Yeah.
who spends most of your time hiding in your living room, writing with your daughters, or in your garden, or watching old mysteries on
Yeah.
TV. It's a lot of public stuff.
There is this phase where it is difficult, it's tender, it's, I think, in part good, but also in part, yeah, you're very vulnerable. But is there anything that you would advise, like new writers, or the new writer that you were before this book came out?
Yeah. I hear people say you learn how to write a book by writing it. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's true for everyone, but it's also true that I had decided I was going to write poetry. And so I had studied poetry, and it was really hard and humbling for me to step away from that and to say, I'm going to do my best at this new thing that I don't know how to do. I'm not good at. I love memoir. I read memoir like crazy. I've read everything you've ever written, of course.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And loved it. But it's also like I've always been intimidated by the willingness to be open and public with your story, and what that means for every individual person. So I was, scared to death at the prospect of that. And if I could go back and talk to her, what I would probably say is it's worth it. All of that trepidation that you feel and the cost that you think it's going to have, it's still worth it, because what would the alternative be? It would be not having written the book. And the book matters to me.
It matters to you, but it also matters. It really does matter. I just remember the first time I met you, you were like working as a nurse, I think, at that time, also raising a family and having time to write and all this other stuff. What I remember about your reading was, first of all, just your voice, how strong it was. But again, this really wide perspective. I wonder how writing fits into this life that you've created.
I have pretty sweet kids, and I don't want to paint a picture of them as like being this sort of chaotic cloud of trouble. When I was raising them and they were small, most of our day had to do with their education, which was happening at a different level than mine. I was always in school too. That's because I was always trying to finish my degree. So we were both learning all the time. So I had to get up really early to write. And then as they got older, my girls specifically started to show a real interest in writing. And so we began doing it together. It's like how we kind of hang out. And it's one of my favorite things about my life, I have to be honest. And they're my first readers, as is my husband.
I've never heard of somebody having their children be their first readers. Sometimes if you're lucky, you'll have like a partner whose opinion you really value. Like I have that, and I'm so glad, because it's not always the case. And just the fact that you can respect your daughters and they can respect you enough as not just family, but individuals and artists, it's just really amazing.
I feel like I've had to kind of scrap to have a life where I'm respected and where I have space to do what I want to do with my time. And so I've tried really hard to help my girls have that right off the bat.
One thing I'd like to ask for is for you to give a writing prompt, any writing prompt, one that you've found helpful, or maybe one you just thought of 5 minutes ago, or if you forgot one you're thinking of right now.
I actually have one, and it's from you. It's from you. A list of things you know how to do. Just from that one prompt, if I remember correctly, I got 3 different sort of, starting points for other things that came out of it, because especially maybe as a woman, it seems like no one's ever asked me what I know how to do.
We tend to minimize what we know how to do, and also greatly sort of overlook what we know how to do. That's what it was. That's exactly right. And I think that's what floored me, because your list of what you know how to do was like, it wasn't that it was only long, it went all over the place.
Yeah,
I like that mug.
I just wrote an essay about Dolly Parton and Loretta Lynn that was in Elle magazine. And my sweet father-in-law, they went to Gatlinburg recently, and they went to the ranch. And my mother-in-law told me that he absolutely had to buy me this mug. She wrote about Loretta Lynn. We have to get her this. We have to get her this. I just think it's the sweetest thing in the world.
It's totally sweet. And it also tells me that you're going to get Loretta Lynn stuff for the rest of your life. And I'll put a link to that. We'll have a link right below for that, because it's a great, great essay. And I have a Loretta Lynn mug. I used to drive from Memphis and forgetting the the place where her like country kitchen is, but they just had a little store and these sort of basic Loretta Lynn mugs. But yours is, that's pretty fancy, Shawna.
Yeah, I know.
Let's see
I
it
know.
again.
I think he shelled out the big bucks for it.
I think he did.
I really loved being in that workshop with you. And I remember thinking it's funny because I remember thinking in the middle of that workshop, like, this sounds kind of maybe a little self-involved, but I remember thinking, I wonder if I'll ever write a book and she'll read it, like,
did you not know that you would?
Oh, maybe it's a sort of a side effect of growing up. And I think you have this in common with me, growing up among people who are underestimated all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I just grew up being underestimated.
Mm-hmm.
I felt by everybody outside of the mountains. And so I think you internalize that a little bit, and you kind of underestimate yourself. And so it's taken a lot of work, emotional work, for me to get to a place where I can, I say I can do it, which it's funny because that's where I ended the book, right?
Yeah, you can do it.
I have to,
and you're deserving of it. If you like what you heard, buy a copy of Shawna's book at the links below. I look forward to seeing you next time at the Memoir Cafe.